Rishi Sunak on Sunday said he will get tough on China if he becomes Britain's next Prime Minister. He called China the number one threat to domestic and global security. According to AFP, his promise came after his rival in the election, Liz Truss, accused him of being weak on China and Russia. Sunak proposed to close all 30 Confucius institutes in Britain in order to prevent the spread of Chinese influence through culture and language programs. He also said he will kick the Chinese Communist Party out of our universities by forcing higher education establishments to disclose foreign funding of more than £50,000 and reviewing research partnerships. He said Britain's spy agency MI5 will be used to combat Chinese espionage and would be considering building a NATO style international cooperation to tackle Chinese threats in cyberspace. He added that he will look into banning Chinese acquisitions of key British assets, including strategically sensitive tech firms. Sunak listed several complaints against China and said the Asian superpower was stealing UK's technology and infiltrating its universities, supporting Vladimir Putin by buying Russian oil and attempting to bully its neighbors, including Taiwan. He said they torture, detain, and indoctrinate their own people, including in Xinjiang and Hong Kong, in contravention of their human rights, and they have continually rigged the global economy in their favor by suppressing their currency. Enough is enough. For too long, politicians in Britain and across the West have rolled out the red carpet and turned a blind eye to China's nefarious activities and ambitions. I will change this one day, I, as the Prime Minister, said Sunak. Cash strapped Pakistan's cabinet has approved an ordinance to bypass all procedures and abolish regulatory checks for the emergency sale of states' assets to foreign countries, according to a media report on Saturday, as the country tried to avert a looming default. According to the Intergovernmental Commercial Transactions Ordinance 2022, which was approved by the federal cabinet on Thursday, the government has also barred the courts of the country not to entertain any petition against the sale of assets and the shares of government companies to foreign countries, the Express Tribune newspaper reported. The decision was taken in a bid to sell stakes of oil and gas companies and government owned power plants to the UAE to raise USD 2 billion to USD 2.5 billion to avoid the looming default. Through the ordinance, the centre has also empowered itself to issue binding instructions to the provincial governments for land acquisition, the report said, citing content from a copy of the ordinance. But President Arif Alvi has not signed the ordinance yet, it said. The UAE in May refused to give cash deposits to Pakistan due to Islamabad's inability to return previous loans and instead asked to open its companies for investment. Finance Minister had said this week that it usually took 471 days to complete one privatization transaction. He had added that the government had to conclude deals with foreign countries in days to urgently raise funds. The International Monetary Fund has placed a condition that Pakistan's case would not be taken to board until it arranged USD 4 billion from friendly countries to bridge the financing gap, the report said. The 2019 novel coronavirus outbreak changed the world, and 2 years of pandemic later, as the world has adapted to the new normal, the World Health Organization WHO declared another global health emergency. The WHO on Sunday sounded its highest level of alarm for monkeypox, declaring it a public health emergency of international concern. This is the same declaration that was used for COVID 19 in January 2020. The threat level is moderate for all regions across the world, with the exception of Europe, where it is assessed to be high. More than 16,000 monkeypox cases have been reported from 75 countries since the first recorded case on May 6. As of July 25, India has reported 4 cases. As the world braces for a new disease to become a global phenomenon, when does an outbreak become a global health emergency? The WHO has announced a public health emergency of international concern 6 times between 2009 and 2020. These are the 6 times a public health emergency of international concern is defined by WHO as an extraordinary event which is determined to constitute a public health risk to other states through international spread of disease and to potentially require a coordinated international response. This definition implies a situation that is serious, sudden, unusual, or unexpected, carries implications for public health beyond the affected state's national border, and may require immediate international action. The durations between the emergency of disease and being declared a global health emergency have also been different. The number of cases was a major factor in the outbreak being considered a global health emergency. The number of countries reporting the outbreak also determined whether the disease was considered endemic, pandemic, or an outbreak. The rapid spread of monkeypox and its outbreak represents a global health emergency. The World Health Organization announced on July 23rd, first detected on May 6, there have been more than 16,000 cases of monkeypox in more than 75 countries and 5 deaths in Africa. The viral disease, which spreads via close contact and tends to cause flu like symptoms and pus filled skin lesions. Chess is known for being one of the games played with calm, concentration, patience, and strategic thinking. However, a game of chess took a violent turn at the Moscow Open when a chess playing robot callously grabbed and broke a 7-year-old boy's finger and fractured it during a match. The robot was purportedly unsettled by the quick responses of his opponent, according to several Russian media outlets. The incident happened last week at the Moscow Open, according to the president of Moscow Chess Federation, Sergei Lazarov. The robot has played several matches earlier without being perturbed. A video by the Basa Telegram channel shows how the robotic arm pinched the minor boy's finger for several seconds before the public came rushing in for help. They freed a 7-year-old boy and ushered him away. Calling it an extremely rare case, the vice president of Russian Chess Federation said that this is one of the first cases that he can recall. The robot appeared to pounce after it took one of boy's pieces. Rather than waiting for machine to complete its move, the boy opted for a quick riposte, the vice president told Basa. A powerful 7.1 magnitude earthquake struck Philippine island of Luzon on Wednesday, the US Geological Survey said, badly damaging a hospital and buildings in a northern province and sending strong tremors through the capital Manila. A hospital in Abra province was evacuated after the building partially collapsed following the quake, but there was no casualties reported, said officials. We are still experiencing aftershocks. We have received reports of damage to houses, but so far no casualties, said Mayor Rovelin Villamor in Abra province. We don't have power supply because that is automatically cut off due to danger, Villamor told. The Public Information Office of Abra province posted photographs on its Facebook page showing buildings badly damaged with walls with huge cracks crumbling. USGC said the earthquake's epicenter was about 11 km east southeast of the town of Dolores and occurred at a shallow depth of 10 kilometers. The focus of attention is on Abra and nearby provinces. This is a major earthquake. We expect strong aftershocks, director of the state seismology agency told. The quake was also felt in Manila, and the city's metro rail system was halted at rush hour after the quake, the transport ministry said. The Senate building in the capital was also evacuated, media reported. The search for a world with similar properties that indicate habitability has been ongoing for nearly 3 decades, ever since the first planet outside the solar system was discovered in 1995. Since then, we have found 5,000 exoplanets spread across the length and breadth of the universe. As the James Webb telescope begins observation, it will have the best shot of finding this unique world and studying the chemical composition of these planets. NASA had earlier this month released the first such observation of the planet seen in near infrared wavelength. The world's most powerful telescope looked at WASP 96b, a hot, puffy gas giant planet orbiting a distant sun-like star. The telescope, in its first observation itself, found a distinct signature of water, along with evidence of clouds and haze in the atmosphere of the planet, revealing its potential and ability to peer through and find Earth 2.0. Researchers will study more than a dozen planets ranging in size from gas giants down to a small terrestrial system of approximately Earth-sized planets. That can help build the contest for maybe finding Earth 2.0 someday. For me, finding another Earth-like planet is important because it answers fundamental questions. How did we get here? Are we alone? Are there other planets out there like ours? Says Lewis. The team will use the telescope to look into gas giants like Jupiter, which composes mostly of helium and hydrogen. The heat wave has changed people's perception as to whether climate change is happening, said German climate activist Luisa Neubauer while speaking to press. In the interview, she talked about the reasons for the extreme heat wave sweeping Europe and the climate change phenomenon that the world is facing. As the world is grappling with climate change, Europe and West are reeling under a tremendous heat wave. When asked if heat wave and extreme temperatures are due to the lack of an appropriate plan, the activist said that people of Germany are suffering and dying from the heat wave but do not have any political plan right now out there to protect people from the extreme temperatures. We are seeing a heat wave that many of us, especially the younger generation, have never witnessed before, Neubauer said. Reporter also asked the activist about the climate crisis and why people do not take it as seriously as other issues. Replying to this, the German activist said tackling the climate crisis and protecting people would mean getting into a one on one fight with the fossil fuel industry. The industry is behind much of the wealth and growth of most of the world. Politicians have chosen to delay, deny, and play down the dangers of the climate crisis in order to get into that fight. The front pages of newspapers in Britain were dominated by heat wave warnings. Last week, as the weather forecaster issued its first ever red extreme heat warning for parts of England, with the Met Office forecasting that the temperature would reach 40 degrees Celsius for the first time in the country. A national emergency was declared for 2 days. Hundreds of Iraqi protesters breached Baghdad's parliament on Wednesday, chanting curses against Iran in a protest against the selection of a nominee for prime minister by Iran backed parties. Many protesters were followers of an influential cleric. Some were seen walking on tables and waving Iraqi flags. No lawmakers were present, only security forces were inside the building, and they appeared to allow the protesters in with relative ease. The breach came amid the biggest protest since Iraqi elections were held in October. The demonstrators were protesting the recent nomination of Mohammad al Sudani as the official nominee of the Coordination Framework Bloc, a coalition led by Iran backed Shiite parties and their allies. Riot police used water cannons to repel demonstrators, pulling down cement blast walls, but many breached the gates to the area which houses government buildings and foreign embassies. The demonstrators walked down the zone's main thoroughfare with dozens gathering outside the doors to the parliament building. Riot police assembled at the doors to the main gates. Demonstrators crowded around two entrances to the green zone with some scaling the cement walls and chanting Sudani out. Caretaker Prime Minister Mustafa Al Kadhimi called for calm and restraint and for protesters to immediately withdraw from the area. On July 28th, Chinese President Xi Jinping and United States President Joe Biden spoke on a phone call that lasted for over 2 hours. While the United States made a prior announcement about the call, there was no statement from the Chinese side. Xi and Biden have not met in an in-person summit yet, but this was the fifth call between the two leaders since Biden assumed the presidency in January 2021. The Chinese readout called the exchange candid and in-depth. The Chinese side made it a point to emphasize that the call was arranged at Biden's request. Despite growing tensions and challenges, such exchanges indicate that the two sides are willing to ease tensions in relations. The call is significant for a number of reasons, but both sides have different reasons to keep lines of communication open. For United States, China's support to Russia in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war is still a major hindrance in countering Russia. In this context, the United States Department spokesperson said, China claims to be neutral, but its behavior makes clear that it is still investing in close ties to Russia. However, maintaining regular exchanges with the United States is more important for China at the moment. Taiwan has been a major factor in China-United States ties and was discussed extensively during this call as well. On Taiwan, the Chinese readout was full of the usual rhetoric and threatening tone. Those who play with fire will perish by it. It is hoped that the United States will be clear-eyed about this. The United States should honor the One China principle and implement the three joint communique both in word and in deed. Stating that in the last 5 weeks, COVID-19 deaths are increasing. World Health Organization WHO Chief Dr. Tedros Adhanom on Wednesday called for developing new vaccines to curb the infection. In opening remarks at the COVID-19 media briefing, WHO Chief Tedros Adhanom said, although the COVID-19 pandemic is far from over, we are now in a very difficult situation to where we were a year ago. And we have learned a number of important lessons. One of the most important is that the most effective way to save lives, protect health systems, and reopen societies and economies is to vaccinate the right groups first, he said. He stated that even in some countries that have reached 70% vaccination coverage, if significant numbers of health workers, older people, and other at-risk groups remain unvaccinated, deaths will continue, health systems will remain under pressure, and the global recovery will be at risk. This is not theoretical, this is real. The WHO chief also urged all countries to strive for the target of 70% vaccination coverage. While vaccines have saved countless lives, they have not subsequently reduced transmission. So it's vital for governments and the private sector to continue collaborating and investing in the development of new vaccines that prevent both infection and disease, he said, adding that we also need vaccines that can be delivered more easily, such as through nasal sprays or drops. WHO chief urged all countries to access and strengthen their readiness and response plans for future waves of transmission, including surveillance, testing, strong clinical management, and a well equipped health workforce.